In the back. Ma'am, your name?
Lucy,
Lucy, yes ma'am.
can you help clarify Revelation 12:17, where it talks about the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnants of her seeds, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus, in reference to a lot of people say that the quote that Ellen White uses where she says that the church looks like it's about to fall, but the church does go through. I'm a little bit confused on that as to who exactly is the church, what church goes through.
It's a great question, Lucy. I think the best way to answer that, Lucy, is to look in history. If you go back, Lucy, to the Adventist church in the days of Jeremiah and Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar, or Babylon the Great, came in and wiped out the Adventist structure in Jerusalem. Many Adventists lost their lives. Many did. Lucy, in that story of the Adventist church in the days of Daniel, what went through? What survived, Lucy, the attack of Babylon? What survived? It was the faithful Seventh-day Adventists. It was the Daniels, the Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, and other faithful souls. They survived. They kept on going, and it was through them that the light of God's truth filled the earth, right? Now, let's go down 500 years to the first century Adventist church, okay? We read about it in Great Controversy, the first chapter, the destruction of Jerusalem. The way that the Adventist leaders in the first century kept the brethren, supporting them with their funds and supporting them with their time and presence, was they said, look, this is God's church. It is God's eternal church, and it will always survive no matter what. Well, Lucy, it was the deceived Seventh-day Adventists that listened to their devil-possessed conference leaders whose blood ran down the steps of Herod's temple. Now, Lucy, in that story of ancient Adventism in the first century, what went through? Who survived the assaults of Romanism, the pagan Roman Empire? What survived and carried forth with the message of God? It wasn't apostate Adventism. It was the faithful souls who heeded the warning of Christ. When you see them standing in the holy place, you flee out of here. They survived, Lucy. They carried the message of God to the world. Colossians 1 says, Paul said, we have preached the gospel to every creature. Every creature. So, Lucy, in Nebuchadnezzar's time, in the time of Christ, the church that went through were the faithful souls who had a mind to spread the truth of God in the world. They survived. Apostate Adventism, apostate leaders that were deluding the people just so they could get their money, Lucy, they died, and they will die in the second death. They did not go through, Lucy. So now we come to today. What's going to go through today? Faithful souls who want to spread the truth of God throughout the world. They will go through, Lucy. But those deceived Seventh-day Adventists who are following leaders that are telling them they'll be saved in their sins, that are telling them, we got to ordain women, that are just focusing on everything, Lucy, but the promulgation of the three angels' messages. Lucy, they're going to be slaughtered. They are going to be slaughtered, just as Ezekiel 9 says. That's what's going to happen, Lucy. So, I know in Ellen White's comments on Ezekiel chapter 9, she says, the words of Ezekiel chapter 9 will be literally fulfilled. And Ezekiel 9 talks about the slaying of God's apostate people.
And actually that selected message is 380. I don't know whether it's book 1 or 2, whatever it is. The next page really identifies who goes through anyway in the same, they stop the quote right there on page 380, but if you read the very next page, she says who's going through it.
You bet. Well, history and the biblical history, it's so clear. It's so clear. Daniel, his friends, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, and other faithful souls, they went through. But apostate Adventism, they were destroyed. They were annihilated. That's what happened in the first century. It's a tragedy when you think about the Adventist church in the first century. They were being told, stay in the church. It's going through. This is God. God put His blessing on this, and it will never be removed. That's exactly what Seventh-day Adventist leaders in apostasy are saying today. It's all about the church. Caiaphas, as the president of the General Conference, Caiaphas knew that Jesus was all He claimed to be. He knew He was. He knew He was the Son of God. You don't raise people who've been dead for 4 days, or people that can't see, or people that haven't walked all their life, and then now they're shouting and leaping and praising God, and people are walking out of graves. And you can't tell me that the president of the General Conference in the first century did not know that Jesus was all He claimed to be. But Caiaphas, he was more interested in saving the church rather than the truth. And that's what's happening today. Adventists today, they will destroy the truth. They will reject the truth. They will turn their ears from hearing the truth. They will persecute those who give the truth to save the church.
So what do you think of the statement where she says, or where even Jesus says, your house is left unto you desolate? When he left, and it looks to me like He left the church. Didn't He leave the Jewish church when He said that? In Desire of Ages, doesn't it say to never return?
Mm-hmm. That was Jesus' final. He had just preached the sermon in Matthew 23, the woes on the scribes and Pharisees. And that was His final public sermon, Brian. That was on Wednesday morning. He left the temple. He said, your house is left to you desolate. Leaves the temple, meets with the Greeks who wanted to have an interview with Him, in John 12. From there, He and the disciples repair to the Mount of Olives. That's when they asked Him the question in Matthew 24. What will be the signs of your coming and of the end of the world? That's when He gave the Matthew 24 sermon to His disciples on the Mount of Olives. Shortly after that, the next day, on Thursday, they had the preparation for Passover. Thursday night, they had the meal, the foot washing. Later on that evening, He was arrested. So,
but for the next 70 years, before its destruction, really, it was...
It was, well, Christ said that would have been in 31. The temple was actually annihilated in 70, so 39 years. You know, it's fascinating. It's really amazing because after Christ said that, after Christ was crucified, who did the disciples primarily preach to for the next 3.5 years? The Seventh-day Adventists.
They still have 3.5 years at a time. God had a lot of them.
That's right, Gail. Absolutely. That's based on the prophecy in Daniel 9. Mm-hmm.
God keeps his word.
Absolutely. So
what would be the meaning of that statement that Jesus made?
your house is left unto you desolate. Probably the best thing to do, Brian, I could speculate on what it means. I think probably the best thing to do is, do a CD-ROM search from Ellen White and read all that she says about it.